my name is Daisy Upton, also known as the 5-Minute Mum, and I am the author of the book Give Me 5. I first started writing my blog in 2018 after I'd had the flu and felt incredibly unwell, and I needed to find something really quick and easy to entertain my children that didn't require any effort from me. So as a teaching assistant in my career before having children, I had a few skills and tips and tricks up my sleeve, and I wanted to put those to use with my own children at home. So I started coming up with silly little 5-minute games where I could just grab something off the side in the kitchen and say, let's play this for a few minutes. And then I felt like I had ticked off and done something really useful with my kid that day, and I could kind of push the guilt back again, because sometimes as parents we all feel really guilty that we aren't doing enough, or that we haven't taught our children something particular. So I wanted to get rid of that feeling, because it only takes a few minutes a day doing something one-to-one with your child to really say, do you know what, I've ticked that box, we've done something brilliant, great, let's crack on with the rest of our day. So after I'd had a few of these ideas, my friends started asking me about them, and so I thought I'd start a blog and write them all down. And my friends really enjoyed the blog, and they sent me photos of their children playing, and they shared it and with their friends and on just my personal Facebook page. And I thought, perhaps I'll start a proper blog and an Instagram page and see what happens. So I did, and it very quickly became very popular, and I was really surprised and really thrilled. And I started writing more games, and more ideas kept coming to me, and the more we played at home with my two children, who were 3 and 1 when we started, the more games came out of my head and the more I remembered from my school days. So we just started playing more and more, and I started sharing them more and more, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I was approached by a literary agent who said that she thought perhaps my games could go into a book. And then I was lucky enough to meet with the folks at Penguin in the UK, and they decided they would like to publish my book. So the thing about the book that was really important to me when I first met with the publishers was I wanted it to be as easy for parents to look up and find a game quickly as it was to play them and basically take 5 minutes all the time. So I wanted the pages really clear, and I wanted to base it on a recipe book. So quite often, if we're thinking what shall I have for dinner, we will flick through a recipe book and look at the pictures and think, oh yeah, that looks delicious, or that sounds tasty based on the title, and then we'll decide to make that. I wanted it to be very similar to that, so you could flick through it and kind of look very quickly at the picture and think, oh, that looks fun, we've got those ingredients, those things that we can grab, and play them really fast, and then shut the book, put it on the side and get it set up really, really quickly. So that was the idea behind the book, and I think it's probably one of the reasons that I still use it all the time myself, and I think that other people really enjoy it and use it. I wanted it to be really flickable and bendy, and I wanted people to have, you know, written their own ideas on the sides of the pages and folded down the pages that were the kids' favourite or bookmarked their favourite. I wanted it to be a really usable book that you would just be able to have on the side all the time when you're home. When it comes to preparing games and activities for children, I do have one tip, and it's my biggest tip and the thing I constantly refer to with every single game and activity I play, and I call it my golden rule. And the golden rule is this: it's rather than saying to our kids, oh look, I've set this up, come and play, it's going to be really fun, and showing them an activity and then setting it up perhaps, wait until they are distracted or busy, or perhaps out the house at nursery or school, and then I set up the game. So perhaps they'd be watching TV and I'd set something up, or they'd be playing somewhere else and I'd set something up, and I would just leave it out in a space that they can see it, not tell them anything, and just wait for them to find it. And the reason that I do this is because it totally puts the control back to the child, which is really important when it comes to play. If you tell a child we're going to do this, if you tell anybody we're going to do this, your instant reaction is to kind of go, it's not my choice, it's not my decision, so I'm going to push back a little bit on that. Especially if they can spot letters or numbers in it and it feels like learning or school or something a bit serious. So instead, we lay out the game so it looks nice and enticing and leave it and wait. And then if they do approach it and decide to play it, we play together. And if they don't, it doesn't matter, because it's only taken me 5 minutes to set up, so I'm not going to be too upset about it. And I'll either leave it there for another day if I can, or put it all away and get it out another day and see if they fancy it then. I totally leave the control and the choice up to my children, whether we play or not. And more often than not, when they are left to find it and they discover it and they say, "Mummy, what's this?" And I say, "Oh, it's a game, you have to get the ball into the cup, do you fancy playing?" Then I've captured them and they want to play. But if I had said to them, "You have to come and play this, we've got to get that ball in the cup," I have a feeling that they would turn their noses up and run the other way. So my biggest tip is always the golden rule. If you're finding you're setting up lots of games and your child is never approaching it, then the other tip I would give is to have a little play yourself. So quite often I would sit down at the game and start throwing the ball into the cup, or trying to knock the letters off the wall and playing it myself and saying things like, "Oh, got one," or "I missed that one," or "Yes, look what I knocked over." And once they see that you're playing, they get great FOMO, fear of missing out, and they want to then join in. So that's the ways that I would entice, especially you and my eldest, who was initially reluctant to do anything with letters or numbers in. That was the way I first got him interested in all of my games and activities. A particular thing I find that makes kids' activities really fun is anything destructive and physical. So children love to be really active, so quite a lot of my games are based around throwing or running or knocking things over. One of the games that I play is the target practice. That was one of the first ones I came up with, and it's letters on a washing line and trying to throw or catapult or hit those letters. And children love that because they feel like they're getting to do something they wouldn't perhaps usually get to do, which is, try and destroy something. I'm sort of encouraging them, saying, "Knock down that letter, go and get it." And they really find that fun and silly. The other thing is, anything where you're engaged to them one-to-one, children really get a lot out of that and love it. So anything where you're sitting down on the floor at their level will instantly activate something in them that makes them think, "This is going to be fun. Mummy or daddy or whoever it is playing with me. I want to join in." So getting right down at their level, being sort of so you can get face to face with them, is a really good way to go to make them feel like that's going to be a really fun game. The other thing that I often do is try to do something silly or get it wrong myself initially at the very beginning of the game. If they can see me make a mistake and laugh about it, then they're more inclined to try, knowing that if they make a mistake, it doesn't matter, it's funny, it's not a big problem, we're just trying out something and it's learning. And I always try and do silly voices or laugh, or if something funny happens, we all giggle and fall about laughing. And if they do decide to destroy the game, or they don't want to play anymore, or they've had enough, then I totally let them walk away, or I say, "Oh, it's okay, we don't have to play anymore." Again, like with the golden rule, I let them decide and lead the way, and that way it always stays on the fun side rather than the pressured, "We must play this, we must learn this" side of activities. If we keep the priority as fun all the time, and if we're not having fun, stop, then I tend to find my children are always really, really keen to do something that I've set up, because they know that, oh, that's set up and it means we're going to have 5 minutes of a really good time together. My other tip is to always be dictated to by them and their interests. So I have a big scope of games in my book, Give Me 5. There's about 150 something games and activities. And the reason for this is that I would tend to invent a game based on what my little one was into at that time. So there's lots of games with vehicles, cars, trucks, trains, because Ewan for a period of time was really into those things. So I'd always do a game with him that revolved around those. And for Florence, my youngest, she was more into role play and teddies and dolls and making cups of tea. So all the games in the book that revolve around that are for her, because that was what she wanted to play. I tend to always say to people when they come at me and say, "Oh, I don't know how to engage my child in learning or play," is to just ask, well, what's their favourite thing to do? If their favourite thing to do is run around outside and be really busy and active, then play one of the games in the book that promotes gross motor skills and all those things like throwing and jumping and catching. And if your child is quite a quiet little soul and likes to sit down, then I'd perhaps do some of the fine motor games where it's things that are to do with writing or drawing or threading or Play-Doh, and some of the games that are a bit quieter and calmer. Be totally led by their interests. Have a look at your child, you know them best, and think what would they really enjoy the most, and perhaps fold down the pages of the games in the book that you think that they would enjoy. Or even flick through the book with them and say, which one would you like to play? Which one do you think looks good? And again, let them have the control, be led by them, and then you're way more likely to play it and therefore get something out of it for both of you. Juggling childcare and working during a pandemic has been an absolutely incredibly difficult time for parents. Myself as a working mother, and my husband also works, and we had 2 children at home for quite a long period of time who I had to homeschool, and so my heart goes out to every parent that is having to juggle this. Obviously, some parents, there's only one of them and they might have multiple children, and that itself is an incredibly difficult task. But I think it's difficult for every parent at the moment. There's a lot less things to do with our children, and it makes your world feel much smaller and the days seem a lot longer. Everybody, I think, is finding it difficult. I think the first thing to say is that even people who, like me, who have written books on children's activities or who are teachers by their career choices, even those people who entertain and educate children for a living are finding this difficult. So if you are finding it really hard, don't beat yourself up, because if even the people that do it for a living are finding it hard, then if you don't, then you should definitely be finding it difficult. It is a really, really hard thing to have to undertake. However, there are a few little tips and tricks that I have posted on my blog or talked about before, which can be helpful. The first one is to set yourself a routine or a daily schedule that works for you. It doesn't have to follow my routine or schedule, but something that you find works really well for your family. So if you find your children have lots of energy in the morning, perhaps do something really active with them first thing, so that you know that they can burn off that energy, and later on perhaps you can set up a few calmer activities in the house that will keep them busy, and then you can open the laptop and start working. That's quite often what I did throughout the time when I was homeschooling the children, was knowing that at some point in the afternoon we'd have some downtime, some TV time or iPad time, and that's when I would sort of start get to work. Also, the other thing I would say is, if you do have a partner at home, is to play to your strengths. So my husband's incredibly good at anything logical and maths and science related, so he would take on any learning like that with the children, whereas I'm quite creative and I like art and playing 5-minute games, so I would sort of do things with them like that. So they were getting a nice balance between the two. My other tip is, if everything is seeming way too much, the one thing that I always try to do with my kids, if I can't do anything else with them for 5 minutes, is to read with them, either reading to them or them reading to me. I think reading is just such an important both skill, because it underpins everything that they do in education, and also it's a really nice activity that makes us feel a lot better as parents that we've done something with them. So getting out a book for 5 minutes and reading with them or reading to them is always a nice thing to do. I try to have a few book baskets around the house all the time, so that if we're ever just sat down in any room, we can grab something and read it together. And I tend to move the books around as well, so that children see something that they think is brand new, but actually it's a book that we just haven't read for a while, and I sort of move that to the front of the pile, or I stick it out on the sofa so they can see it and find it, and they're way more likely to pick it up and want to read than not. The other thing that we've been doing whilst working from home and having the children at home is just setting stuff up first thing in the morning or when they're in bed at night. So I would get a few activities, a few of my 5-minute games ready. I'd have a few trays, you can use a baking tray or a play tray, whatever you've got, and set out 2 or 3 of those activities ready to go for the next day, so that at any time we can grab one, play a 5-minute game which I know has letters and numbers and something educational in it, and then I can leave them to play independently, knowing that I have done something really valuable with them. And I can say, right, I'm going to set a timer now for an hour or 30 minutes, and you can play with these these activities, or you can play with your toys, but mummy's going to go and do some work, okay? And I'd set the timer so that they can see. I use some sun timers, or sometimes I'll set a clock, a stopwatch going, and then they can see how long they've got left, and I would then leave them to it and then come back to them with the next 5-minute game when they know the timer's gone off, and spend a bit of time with them. So it's just trying to create that balance between trying to get some work done and also trying to engage with our children and spend some time with them. But like I said right at the beginning, it's incredibly difficult, and so try not to beat yourself up or feel too guilty if you're finding that you are watching a bit more telly than usual, or that things are just seeming very, very hard. Talk to your kids about it. Have a chat with them. Say, you know, Mummy or Daddy's finding this really difficult, this is why, and ask them how they're feeling too. Spend 5 minutes chatting with them and explaining. I think is always a good way to go, and be honest with our kids if we're finding things tough ourselves, so they can see how we deal with those emotions ourselves, because they too will be having big feelings about missing people or finding it difficult.